Good morning. My name is Dr. Esther Getambu. I'm a consultant physician and nephrologist. Welcome to our church health program, and we are recording from St. Peter's Church. Today I want to discuss a subject that is very ill understood. I want to discuss about nutrition. You are what you eat. So you need to know what you're eating and what it is doing to you. Food is classified into three main groups: the proteins, carbohydrates, and what people call vitamins or vegetables and similar, which provide trace elements, especially multivitamins. Now, when you're eating any meal, one should try to eat something from each of those three groups. The carbohydrates give you energy. The proteins provide you with the building blocks. If you are a growing person, then you will grow. If you are already grown up, it will provide the necessary elements for healing. For example, when you get cut, that wound will heal. It will be using proteins essentially to heal. If you're a child, the muscles will require proteins in order to develop. And if you are short of this, you get what is called protein calorie malnutrition, because unless you eat nothing, you will be eating calories in a lesser proportion to the proteins, so they are unbalanced. And you have seen this sort of thing in people who developed kwashiorkor, or people who are on funny diets and they develop certain food related disorders. So it is good to eat one from each of the groups. Proteins, you may remember, are what we call first-class proteins. That is meat from animals, chicken, fish, that kind of thing. Then there are the vegetable-based proteins, like beans. Then the carbohydrates. These are the energy-providing foods. Essentially, when you eat them, they are eventually converted into sugars. And these sugars are used by your muscle and your brain to provide fuel for those organs to function. And they come from the groups of, for example, cereals, maize, wheat, those kind of things. They come from roots, things like potatoes, sweet potatoes. And essentially those two groups are the ones that provide carbohydrates. And of course, refined sugar is a major carbohydrate that we are always eating. So, why are we discussing this? What is the importance of discussing what we eat? My reason for choosing this topic is the amount of rumors that are going around about what you should eat, the misconceptions about what people should eat, and how much they should eat of each, and what is best and what is not best. We need to understand why we're eating what we're eating. We need to understand that different foods are suitable for different ages. We need to understand what happens when you eat certain things. For example, let us start with children. The number one food for children to eat is milk. The rest of us, when we drink milk, we just grow fat, and it doesn't really do us any good. Calcium is hardly absorbed. But children require milk in order for them to grow tall. So a lot of milk-based foods should be used in children. Children also require a lot of energy providing foods. For example, the wheat whether it's in the form of bread or cake or what, the maize, whether it's in form of maize itself or cornflakes or similar, the rice, etc., etc., the potatoes, they can eat chips. Why? Children are moving all the time. If you see a child who is just sitting, likely there's something wrong with that child. So children use up a lot of energy in their day-to-day activities. They run all day, they play all day, so they use up all this energy from these energy-giving foods. Children also need vitamins, but you will find that a lot of children don't like to eat any of the vitamin-based foods. But you don't have to force them to eat skuma or manavu or the kind of things you like to eat. Children can eat fruits. Fruits have vitamins. Papayas, many children don't like papayas. It's full of vitamin A, but mapera, all children like mapera, and maperas, when they are available, they are really an excellent source of vitamins and, surprisingly, proteins. So you have to find the kind of vitamin-based or vegetable-based that a child would like to eat. But the most essential thing is give them the milk. 2, teenagers. As the children transit from child to teenagers and semi-adults, they are also growing, especially after puberty. They have very rapid growth spurts. They eat a lot, but they need to eat the right things as well. This is where proteins, especially first-class proteins, if they're available, if not, you can use vegetable-based proteins, are very useful. They can continue drinking milk, but they need even more energy foods. That is why you find your teenage boy or girl can eat a whole loaf of bread by themselves. Because they're aside from growing, which also requires a lot of energy, they're always running around. They need the energy. And they need it frequently. Then comes the adults. At this time, somebody should be slowing down on their energy foods. If you're not using up that energy because now you've gone into an adult stage, you don't move so much, that food will be converted, instead of energy, it will be stored for energy at a later stage. And this storage is what you call fat. At this stage, one should really eat balanced food. By this time, people should have learned how to eat vegetables. If you can get first-class proteins, any other proteins, and a carbohydrate, and start eating in moderation. One doesn't have to eat the same way they were eating as teenagers because they're not as active. Then comes during this period of young adulthood, this is the period that people reproduce, the pregnant, especially pregnant women, young women. They have to eat well, but they have to be careful about the energy content of the food that they eat. And also they have to be cognizant of the fact that they are eating for 2 people. And 2 elements in particular are required in this sort of a state. One is iron and the other is calcium. At this stage, you're still absorbing milk, so you can drink milk, but you have to eat iron-containing foods. Some vegetables, things like mchicha, and meat, if you can get meat. Otherwise, they have to take supplementation. Otherwise, they can become anemic or fairly weak. And if your iron levels are low when you're pregnant, you produce babies with small heads and lower intellect. So they have consequences. By the time now you have matured, the children now finished giving birth, you have to know that you're moving very little in respect to how you used to move as a young man or as a child. So the energy foods should have drop down drastically unless you're a manual laborer. For this, again, you have to balance the proteins that you take, the carbohydrates that you take, and of course, eating of vegetables. The proteins that you take can be first class or vegetable-based proteins, but it should be balanced. Fruits provide the other vitamins. And if you eat appropriately, you do not need to get fat. If you eat an excess of energy foods, the carbohydrates, you're going to store it as energy. And the stores are in the fat, in the form of fat. And you know very well you're not moving, so this calls for extra effort in moving, which we call exercising. Exercising when you're busy, you're going to work, the children, etc., calls for a purposeful effort to utilize the energy that you ate. So now, some of the misconceptions that we have about food. But before we go there, in the 35, 45, 50 range, where middle age, I would say, or young middle age, then there's the older adult. The older adult has certain challenges when it comes to food. They are no longer very able to digest some foods, especially first-class proteins like beef. Fish and chicken are easier to digest. And on top of that, they may not have teeth, so they may avoid some certain foods. But generally, when you're after the age of 60, normally somebody doesn't gain weight. And by the time you get to 70, they start losing weight. Either because they are eating less, because of they don't have teeth, or they have no one to eat with, or various reasons. So eating in the old age is also needs to be known. It is slightly different. You eat what everybody eats. Digestibility is reduced. You have constipation. Food moves, your gut moves very slowly, and so you tend to have constipation. And of course, you have many other diseases that cause you not to be able to eat anything that you want. The diabetes, hypertension, you can't eat a lot of energy food, you can't eat salt, this and that. I would like to talk about the misconceptions of eating. I'm going to just pick on a few that I find very important. The first one I'd like to touch on comes about when you change your socioeconomic status. Now that you are able, you afford to eat how you want, it doesn't mean that you should eat what you want, especially when you're feeding your children. One of the things I have many issues with is how you feed your children in the morning. This so-called cereals with milk and a lot of sugar and a pancake, and you overload them with sugar in the morning. And if you overload them in sugar in the morning, they will become fat. And when they become fat, you have a problem on your hand. Secondly, what you eat, this over-processed food, there really is no reason to eat like a European. You know, they eat those things because they have nothing else to eat, because they have to preserve their foods because of their seasons. But we have good food throughout. You do not and you should not feed your child on chips every day because that's what they want to eat and you can afford to eat chips every day. You're really hurting your child, because chips is a dead food for all intents and purposes. It is overcooked. It is processed in very hot oil, which usually denatures most things. And they are very delicious, so the children eat a lot of them with a lot of salt. And of course, things like tomato sauce, which you don't know whether it's tomato sauce or whatever it is, the red thing in the bottle. And they tend to fill themselves up with that one item, which means they're not going to eat meat. Once you have habituated your child to eat sugar, the one thing you'll find is they'll get caries, they'll get problems with their teeth. So they won't even like to eat meat because it hurts their teeth. And as for vegetables, that is a no-no. It is important to teach your child to eat. If you yourself grew up eating what you were eating and you survived and you're a big man or a big woman, you got to know that that must have been good food. If you follow some of these new trends because you have some money now, you end up with your short, fat children who are likely sickly, obese, with bad teeth. That's one misconception. You eat, give them the food that you ate. Give them the 3 groups and give them proportionately. And as for these things called snacks, it's nice to have snacks, but are they because they're hungry or because it's a habit? If you habituate your children to eating snacks all the time, they'll continue eating snacks. Even when they grow up, they'll be eating snacks. And you know what problems that will bring. Number 2, the other misconception. This is healthy, that is healthy, this other thing, sijui beetroot, sijui nini, sijui nana. No. If there's no research or justification to say that that is healthy, there's no reason to tell yourselves in your chama or whatever that you should be eating this because it's healthy or eat that because it's healthy. The science is clear. In which food group is this thing you're eating and what are the benefits of that? Is it too much of one item? Is it not? For example, fruit juices. I think you should realize that fruit juices, by the time you make 1 cup of orange juice, you have squeezed how many oranges? And what is orange juice? It is the flavor of the orange plus fructose. Fructose is a sugar. And that, notwithstanding, it has acid in it. If you notice, the one thing that causes your children's teeth to decay, really literally to dissolve, is drinking fruit juices, especially those ones from the packet. Give them the orange, the whole orange. When you eat an orange, you have the juice, yes, in moderation, and you have to chew something. The pulp of the orange is chewy, it's a roughage. It will go cleaning out your abdomen. It's a roughage. You'll be able to pass stool nicely. Plus, it delays the absorption of sugar, avoiding sugar spikes. So when you hear that, oh, this food is nice, oh, this chia seeds, oh, this sort of, ask yourself, what is good about it? Which community has been eating this thing for generations and they're doing well with it? Most of the time you find no, nothing like that. Just some people decided it was a good thing to eat. So what I would like to say is that now you have to think of how you're eating. Next session, we shall talk about what you should eat if you have a special problems. The number 1 problem being diabetes, the next one being hypertension. How did you get there? Now that you're there, what should you do? If you have any questions, please write them below in the comments below and we shall answer them. Until next time, goodbye.